to That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my next guest I'm very pleased to have, not because I am super familiar with her work personally, if you don't count the fact that she's given birth to three of the most influential contemporary Christian musicians in the modern era. But she's also had a wonderful ministry of her own, of which a book has come out of, and now a brand new movie that you've been hearing advertised on my broadcast called Unsung Hero. It is the story of David and Helen Smallbone and their family's transition from another continent to the U.S. many years ago. And please put your hands together now and welcome Helen Smallbone to That Kevin Show. Hello, Helen.
Hey, thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you. Thank you for being here. When I started in media 185 years ago, I started out in the world of contemporary Christian music. And so I was spinning songs, and there was this little bright voice that she sounded a little different when she spoke, but she had such a clear tone when she sang, named Rebecca St. James. And
that's it.
She took the world by storm and has just had a wonderful time of ministry and songwriting and everything since then. Mm-hmm. And I never knew until just recently, probably a couple of years ago was when I found out that the very talented duo of For King and Country were in fact her brothers. And in fact, these are all your children, which is the story of the movie Unsung Hero. We'll get into that in a second. But what has it been like to watch these children? And I have three small ones, 14, 11, and 9. I see how God has wired them and kind of put different emphasis and strengths and stuff into their wiring. What was it like for you discovering that God had gifted your children in certain ways and encouraging them to flourish in those arenas?
I think being a parent and watching your children grow is just so rewarding and incredible, really. Like, it's just such a privilege to be able to journey with them and help raise them. Rebecca, we knew, well, it's sort of funny because she used to sing herself to sleep. Singing was one of her sort of therapies in a way. And we were in a very tiny house when we were first married and when we had Rebecca. And there were actually louver doors. So there was no sound barrier even between rooms. And I just remember her putting her down, and then for the next half an hour to an hour, she would just sing. And me thinking, Rebecca, just be quiet. You need to go to sleep. So, that came from a very, very young age. Then got noticed by the Christian school that she was in, and she was working with a music teacher there and in the studio recording some songs that he had written. She got chosen to be a part of the school rock band. So she demonstrated her giftings at a very young age. I remember with Joel, he being fascinated. So the kids grew up around Christian music. Right. The first concert Rebecca attended was when she was 6 weeks old, and it was a Larry Norman concert in the Sydney Opera House.
Why does the devil have all the good music? But go ahead.
So they grew up around music and going to concerts, and it's just been in their DNA. And I remember when David actually brought Stryper to Australia, Joel, because they had really visual covers. Yes. And him listening to their music and sitting with his head down, studying their covers while he's listening to their music. So, that just, and he would have been a toddler, like he would have been 3 maybe at the outside at that point. And then for Luke, I used to keep a journal that would have the major things that I thought were important in their lives that I would like to remember, major stories, incidents, sayings, whatever. And it often got too much for me. So then I just started doing summaries, like a year summary. So when each child turned a new age, I would try and remember back to things that were important or who they were at that age. And so when I gave Luke his book when he turned 21 as a part of his maturing from what I deem as childhood to adulthood, I gave him the book and I looked back through it. And when he turned 4, he had told me that when he grew up, he wanted to be a drummer and to sing. How bizarre. He was 4 years old.
And just so that I understand correctly, what's the age difference between Rebecca and the boys?
So let me think. Joel is the older of Luke and Joel. So he's 84, so there is 7 years difference
So
between
while she was
Rebecca.
actually really hitting stride, they were just coming into an awareness
That's
of what
it.
was happening.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
so
7 years
interesting.
and 9 years. There's 9 years between Rebecca and Luke.
It's so interesting because as I have been appreciative of both of their talents in terms of musicians, respectively, you can kind of see that kind of sense of what you were just talking about and how it kind of influenced Rebecca. Obviously, a big voice, and has always used that voice in very dramatic and powerful ways. And the For King and Country, what I've always loved about their work is the drama and the storytelling and the narrative that they build even into live performances sometimes for the award shows and other things. Here on That Kevin Show, my viewers and listeners know that we have a musical spotlight, new music spotlight every single week. And over the last 3 years, For King and Country have had not 1, but 4 entries in the Song of the Week. And that we've been a big fan of what they do. Telling the story via the big screen, what was it that brought about Unsung Hero?
Well, we've told our story or elements of our story a lot over the years because it had a dramatic influence on us. We came to America from Australia in 1991. It was in failure that we came. We had nothing. And slowly we were living by faith and relying on God to provide for us and lead us. And Rebecca's career came out of that. And then the boys were her crew in the early days, and they came they came from sort of her beginnings. So it's been a huge adventure and huge venture to see them all, I suppose, developing in their own unique ways.
Well, you talk about it being a story that starts in failure. What were the circumstances as to why the U.S. versus Australia?
Well, Australia actually has a similar landmass to America, just without a Canada joined in. And then we have about 10% of the population, and we are like the Northeast, fairly post-Christian. So, it's for David to survive in Christian music was very hard. He was a concert promoter. He had a record company. He managed artists. He really was doing the gamut of Christian music in Australia. He came to me in his late 30s so it would have been the late 80s, and said to me, I don't think if I can keep doing this for the rest of my life. It's just too hard. And then in about 89, he lost $250,000 on a tour, and he knew he wasn't going to trade out of that one. It was just too much. And so we sold our house. We knew this was going to make major life change. He had actually started working with Hills, who ended up becoming Hillsong. He had actually started, we were attending Hills CLC at that time. And then he suggested them recording their praise and worship music. He had actually done the first 2 albums. And then the church realized that it was going to be successful, or that they liked that sort of new development. And so they took it back in-house.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.